Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like experiments, and I like to be in contact with my constituency. So I took the opportunity this weekend when last Sunday my 9-year-old son had his birthday party, and I had 10 9-year-old future voters in my house. So I asked them if I would like to know the real emission from a car in real life, how would I organize something like that? Well, and after 5 minutes of screaming, it was almost council, they came up with a joint plan. And they said, well, what you could do, you could drive a car on the real street and apply mobile testing equipment to it, and then you might know how to what the real emission is of this car.
Wow.
And, well, that of course was a brilliant rocket science solution. But then I read the documents that you were so kind to provide us with, and that told me that in January 2011 the Commission started with an in-depth analysis on exactly this question, on how to measure the real emission by a car. And after 4 years, compared to the 5 minutes of this group of 9-year-olds, and I quote, "This means that the car will be driven outside on a real road according to a certain acceleration and deceleration pattern. The pollutant emissions will be measured by portable emission measuring systems that will be attached to the car." Well, that's rocket science. That took the Commission 4 years, but that's not all. That was in May 2015, when also the Member States, at least in a regulatory committee, agreed with that. Then it takes another 7 months to apply this test, and then, although, well, or maybe because this is rocket science, it takes another 2 years in pilots to see whether this solution is really the right one, to have it really into place. So maybe you can explain to me, if not by pressure from car industry and member states, why it takes years and years to come up with such a simple solution. So that is my first question. Secondly, I have the feeling that we have two different decision-making processes here in Europe. We have one transparent, public, democratically accountable procedure where Council is involved, Commission is involved, this Parliament is involved, and we set emission limits that are the law, the European law. That is one decision-making process. The other one, parallel to that, is secretive, non-democratic, and it seems like their tasks is especially to see how to circumvent the democratic process, and that's the technical committee. So, as we were discussing last week with Commissioner Biankowska, this whole Volkswagen case, exactly at the same time the technical committee was meeting in Brussels. And you're talking about that there is no proposal yet, but as far as I'm well informed, there is something on the table coming from the Commission containing a proposal with a conformity factor of 1.6 in 2017 and 2018, and a conformity factor of 1.19 after that from 2019. This is so concrete that this cannot be a non-proposal. I mean, of course, it's a matter of words. You can call it a non-paper, but this is an actual proposal that has been presented by the Commission in the technical committee last week. So how can you say that once the proposal has been made, it will be made available to Parliament? There is a proposal. Let's not use different words to say that there is no proposal. There is a proposal. My question relating to this is, since lack of transparency is at the root of the problem of this Volkswagen gate, don't you think it's time to change your policy on transparency? In the Financial Times today, a group of investors worth more than £600 billion are asking for that. They want transparency because they fear that the credibility of EU industry is in danger here. So can you please change your policy on transparency and be, as you, and then I quote you want full transparency, and then you talk about a summary of the meeting. We know these summaries, they are 2 lines, that's all. No, I want full transparency. So I want a proposal in this House available, and I also want all the positions of the Member States. Don't you believe that in this crisis, given the fact that this is about air quality of our 500 plus people in Europe, that they have the right to know what their national governments are on their behalf putting on the table behind these closed doors? If certain countries are asking for a conformity factor of 3, then I believe that the people have the right to know this. So please make that available. One final point, Mr. Chairman, and that is about whether or not the Commission was aware of what happened before. We have discussed that last week with Commissioner Bieńkowska. She said the Commission was not aware, even despite the JRC reports from 2011 and 2013. What I find difficult to understand is that in these reports, they not explicitly talk about cheating devices, but they do question whether there might be something like that. And don't you believe that it's the task of the Commission then to at least ask information from the Member States being responsible for the testing and enforcement of that, to ask them to explain the huge difference between the laboratory tests and the real emissions. I would say that that was the role of the Commission to do so. And maybe you can explain me why the Commission did not do so. Thank you.